What's up, YouTube fam? We're gonna talk about and slightly review, but more of a discussion about something that I've been very interested in viewing. That will be releasing its second part of this special tonight. And please, as I get through this, kind of work with me a little bit because it was truly an emotional episode. Because the first part is already available on YouTube and the second part will be releasing tonight. But that is what we're talking about is Vice TV's Dark Side of the Ring. If you have no clue what this series is about, it's returning for season 2 as of today, March 24th, and they're doing the two-part special 2-hour episode dedicated to the tragic Chris Benoit story. So, The Dark Side of the Ring is a series that highlights the world of professional wrestling. Season 1, they kind of talked about and discussed real life circumstances that many superstars had to deal with, whether it be abuse or just abuse or any type of like prejudice or anything of that sort. But what it looks like for season 2, considering that they're starting off with the Chris Benoit story, is going to talk about stories and really getting the behind the scenes story to it, and with the available resources, or maybe it's just the right time to talk about after everything done, because this is a really truly tragic story. Being able to maybe work with people and to get some of these stories told now that it's more or less probably a better time to discuss, and more people may be more comfortable. Whatever it may be, it looks like this is going to be the theme for season 2, is that they're going to dive into some of these stories, behind the scenes stories that have been really floating around the wrestling world that many haven't talked about. And with Vice TV and their resources, they're able to really put on an authentic documentary, considering that the people that may be involved with it and just anything now. So that there was a lot as to why I was interested in hearing and watching this documentary. With that being said, I think it's safe to say I need to give a disclaimer, and my disclaimer is that by no means possible am I going to sit here and condone or glorify the acts of Chris Benoit. By no means necessary. Chris Benoit in 2007, not only did he kill his wife and his son, he hung himself. So, it's an absolute tragedy. It's horrific crime, and by no means I might sit here and condone it, glorify, or anything of that sort. With that being said, in the world of professional wrestling, within the squared circle, Chris Benoit is absolutely one of my favorite wrestlers to do it. Anywhere from New Japan to WCW to WWE, WWF, the Crippler has absolutely been one of my favorites. Even from on the video game and so forth, because seeing this guy, he wasn't as tall as some of these other big wrestlers, but his attitude and his bark was just as big as anyone else that ever stepped in that ring. And his intensity, his moveset, he just has a plethora of instant classics and just amazing matches. I mean, this documentary showed his victory at WrestleMania 20, which is one of the best moments of wrestling, period, alongside his best friend Eddie Guerrero, who also shared the tragic death. But the two of them and their relationship, friendship, within the business and even outside the business, which this documentary highlighted, it's just amazing. Eddie Guerrero, in his own respect, is a legend and one of the best to have ever done it. But what's really special about this documentary is how authentic it is, because the people that's involved in giving their testimonies for both Eddie and Chris, as far as within the wrestling world, the relationship together, the relationship with their friends, personal relationships, And overall, this the people that was at home, the one that, you know, wrestling fans we didn't get to see, and it's truly special. But you know, some of the people that was involved was Chavo Guerrero, who's the nephew of Eddie, Vicky Guerrero, who's Eddie's widow, Dean Malenko and his wife. And Dean Malenko is a professional wrestler, so he's been in the locker room and on the roads with these guys for numerous years. Nancy, who is Chris Benoit's wife, her sister was also a part of it, and their surviving son, David Benoit. Also Jim Ross, who called commentary for WWF, WWE, and Chris Jericho, also, who was all over the world with the two of them as well too. So you definitely got some authentic people with some true, you know, true testimonies that, you know, it's really second to none. Hearing them talk about it is just it really just it's touching, because you know, a lot of them was caught off guard and completely shocked and devastated by the actions of Chris Benoit, that they'd never seen this coming. But you know what else this documentary highlighted is after Eddie's passing, how much of a toll it took on Chris, and how he just, you know, the grieving process was just it was a lot for him. And then, you know, hearing Vicky, you know, who we know was in the business for, you know, the later part of Eddie Guerrero's career, but she was always around, and hearing her, you know, after Eddie's passing, you know, grieving at home and not leaving the bed, and how Nancy and Chris Benoit would visit them, and you know, the relationship she had with that family, and then the relationship she had with Chris, who was still grieving at the same time, and his actions that he was taking while after Eddie had passed, and you know, being able to highlight him at work and highlight him at home, and how he was just a polar difference because of just the grieving process. The story of Chris and Nancy getting together, and how Nancy got her start in the business as well, and, you know, leaving abusive ex-husband or boyfriend Kevin Sullivan, ultimately, you know, and how Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit had, you know, storylines together and bookings together, which had, you know, he as they said in the documentary, he booked himself out of his relationship because she ultimately ended up going to marry with Chris. So just a lot of that type of stuff I just had no clue about, especially because of, I guess, how I viewed wrestling when I was younger. I watched it for wrestling, and the backstory was the backstory. It is what it is. But now, actually, you know, not only just a fan, but again, a tremendous appreciation for the business. You know, hearing these stories and about one of, you know, two of my favorite wrestlers, because Eddie is a legend in his own. And how the parallels and the dynamics and the relationship and all that all come together is just absolutely amazing. But nonetheless, the crime is just so horrific, and, you know, seeing the effects that it left on everyone involved, the business, their family, their friends, the kids, like, it's everything. It's just a lot. It's just a lot. But part 2 will be coming on tonight, and I will record my second half of that tonight. So you know, stay tuned until then, and you know, this is full part 1 of it, which is another